Before I start, Brendan, is there any way to make sure that, the audio is being transmitted well?
Are there members in the public that we could ask?
There are,
Yeah,
Sherman is there, see if Sherman can.
maybe give like a thumbs up
Yeah,
or like a hand raise if you hear
Sure.
things well.
is Sherman hearing us now?
Yeah, maybe just. I think isn't allowed to talk.
Still muted.
Yeah, can you hear us well, Sherman?
Great, very good.
Okay,
Sherman, you can hear me too, right? Because I'm further away than Brendan.
If
I'm
you
gonna
can
take that as
hear
a yes.
him, lower your hand.
Sherman, will you lower your hand to indicate that you hear me? Thank
Oh,
you,
there you
very
go.
good. So we're gonna start now.
okay, just give me just another. Quick moment, just wanna. Yep,
That's perfect timing.
There's broken.
Ready, Brendan?
yes, we are ready.
Very good, we're starting. Welcome to the November 6th, 2025 meeting of the Public Safety and Sanitation Committee. My name is Stuart Getchell, and I'm chair of the committee. Tonight, we're joined by Assistant District Manager Brendan Burke. This meeting is called to order at 18:32. Steve Perez will take minutes tonight. Thank you, Steve. I'm not actually that polite. It's actually written in the script. Thank you, Steve. Brendan will now take attendance.
Committee members, I'll call your name. When your name is called, please say present. I'll announce if there is quorum. Stu Desser. Justin Goldberg.
President.
Gloria Haig. Rupal Kakad.
Here.
Steve Perez. Michael Enroe won't be with us tonight. And Ann Seligman.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time and is shown on the screen before you. Without objection, we will accept the agenda and adopt it. If you have any objections. 3, 2, 1. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The meetings from June and December's meetings came in too late for me today to look at them, so they'll be distributed for approval at the next meeting. Members of the board know the ground rules. I'm not going to recite them. Without objection, we will suspend the rule requiring you that you be recognized before you speak. Obviously, we should, try not to speak over each other. That means me too. Members of the community who are with us, the law doesn't require that we hear you, but at Community Board 6, I've never been to a committee meeting where we didn't want to hear from our neighbors. So if you have any questions or any comments, please just raise your hand at the appropriate time. You can also use the Q&A feature of Zoom and Brendan will catch it. With or without everyone's indulgence, I'm going to make some opening remarks. The subject tonight is the proposed Treatment Court Expansion Act. The aim of the act is to systematize diversion and to increase the number and range of those arrestees who might be diverted from the regular criminal adjudication process to special courts designed to deal specifically with people whose criminal conduct is driven by substance abuse, mental health issues, or developmental disorders. Well, one goal of such diversion might be compassion for offenders who themselves are sort of victims of these mental and social maladies. From a public safety perspective, the goal is to reduce recidivism and overdose. Data tells us that diversion does substantially reduce recidivism among the population. So if your primary desire is to reduce the incidence of crime, this is the path to follow. most of our discussion is gonna be on the efficacy and costs of the program, I think. But a lot of what we need to do is by reflex or prejudice that's rationalized but not rational. So I want to place this in a slightly broader context. Four rationales are given, sometimes contradictory, for why we punish people who commit crimes. They're incapacitation, deterrence, retribution, and rehabilitation. We rarely discuss which of these
I'm sorry,
justifications
could
are.
you just read those four again?
I can, even second from memory.
Yeah.
They are incapacitation, which means putting somebody behind bars so they can't hurt you. Deterrence, which means, you probably will not be so.
I just need the words, I don't need definition.
I like to.
Okay.
I'm going to do it anyway. Deterrence means that, you know that there's punishment coming, so you probably won't do stuff. Retribution is fairly obvious, although it's presented sometimes as a moral, issue. It is probably more just a human function. Rehabilitation is what we're here to talk about tonight. I'll mention, since I just threw this out, that there are some considerations for all of these. Incapacitation means, as we'll learn, imprisonment, which not only, costs a huge amount. So when a crime is committed, we not only pay a social cost of the crime, but then we end up paying for the imprisonment as well. But also, people who go to jail generally get out most of the time. And when they come out, if they're not, quote, rehabilitated, it's not a good scene. So, the Department of Justice says something like 62% of people who are released from a state prison, are sent back to a prison within 10 years. Not a little number at all. When we talk about, deterrence, that is often the reason given for why we send people to jail. And it probably has a certain impact, but it also probably plateaus at the point we're at right now. So if you don't have the mental capacity to look ahead, if you are like most human beings and you're not really good with probabilities, if a police department doesn't clear a whole lot of cases, you may believe either rationally or irrationally that you're gonna get away with it anyway. So deterrence probably is not going to increase when you increase, for instance, the degree of punishment, the years that are gonna, or anything like that. When we talk about retribution, I think it's, sometimes the belief that people are moral actors and they should know better. Again, if we're dealing with people who, don't necessarily have the capacity to understand that, retribution may be unfair, and of course, rehabilitation is what we're talking about tonight. So, as I said, we don't usually express,
Incapacitation.
we don't usually express why we're sending people to jail, you know, these are all sort of taken as given. But those buses that you see, with cages on side the windows, all say Department of Corrections. I don't think anyone believes that when you send somebody with a mental health issue to Rikers, you're making them better. So if we're gonna take this seriously, then we need to change the way we do things. So the coalition that's supporting this bill, of which the New York County Defender Services is one, you're impressed that I got that right, aren't you? Has been working with prosecutors and judges and others, to try to get a broad buy-in and also to just make this a better bill. I think you've been doing that for like a couple of years now.
Yeah,
Um,
4 years since we first.
In Albany, on the Senate side, the bill's now in the hands of the Finance Committee. Last month, it was, in front of the, what was it, the drug,
Substance use and alcoholism.
that's
Alcoholism.
Since it's now November and we're talking about Albany, it's not going to be addressed this year, by the full Senate or the full body. It will be reintroduced probably in January.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it will come under a different number, but it'll be in similar form, although there might be some changes.
Yeah, so why finance, it gets assigned to go through finance or in the assembly side, it's ways and means. And those are the committees that have special expertise in fiscal implications and whether or not it's a fiscally responsible legislation, whether or not the money has been budgeted or appropriated.
Which is a big deal in this case. So the person you just heard speaking is Casey Del Porto. She is a supervising attorney with the New York County Defender Services. With her is Rebecca Cortez, who's also with the NYCDS. We invited the Manhattan DA to be with us, and they told us that they couldn't be here until December. I then tried to arrange for them to come in December, and they're telling us they may not be able to be here then. We have a representative of their office online, so if he wants to contribute anything, he can. They did provide us with,
Yeah.
You're the only name up there.
sorry,
I said you're the only name up there, so I was saying you must be
there would be another category over there. So I'm gonna tell you, they did give us a statement, which I sort of hesitate to read because it's a bit more cryptic than enlightening. But it says that while they support the idea of expanding treatment courts, it's our belief that the bill does not currently reflect best practices in providing alternatives to incarceration. The bill does not include the requisite funding to expand treatment courts, so it could further impede the progress of cases being diverted and increase delays to accessing treatment. While we see limitations in the current draft, there are parts of the bill we strongly support, and we're continuing to engage with the appropriate stakeholders. I'm also told that, Jessica Ramos, State Senator Jessica Ramos' office, has been wanting to speak with Danny, and, they haven't secured a meeting yet, but hopefully they will soon. So Casey, make us believers.
Okay.
Wait, can I ask one quick question? You just mentioned, you said there were some things that they may be for.
Yes, oh.
Do we have a list of that, or they just kind of said
I
there?
don't have a list of that, but if you looked at the notes, if you watched the hearings,
Yeah.
I'm sure you had a ton of time.
I did it like 3 times.
It was basically an all-day hearing. There was extraordinary enthusiasm
Yeah.
for this.
Because we had the bill, 6 months ago or so, it was kind of the same where there were some things we liked, some, the one that was about about discovery and all of that, so. Just think it back to that.
So I should just mention though that, there was extraordinary enthusiasm, however, no district attorneys were present at that hearing, some were invited. They weren't able or didn't show up. I think the Bronx DA was invited in fact. So we
Was that
don't,
intentional, or was
we
that?
don't
It
have,
was intentional, yeah.
we don't have a complete perspective.
We like announced it and, let all of the DAs, including Dasney, know, and they said, thank you, but we will just be watching.
Okay.
And there were, so with all that enthusiasm, there were some objections raised. I thought when I heard the oral testimony, the chief judge and the chief administrative judge of New York were very, very positive. They did raise some concerns, not objections exactly, just concerns about the legislation that they hope would be modified, but you can get into that, so if you.
Okay, sure.
Brandon, you can bring up the slideshow.
Yep. Just a moment to get to the right screen, which is. Just about ready.
Yeah. Okay, so while he's pulling up, maybe we could go ahead and introduce ourselves. My name is Casey Del Porto. As Steve said, I'm the supervising attorney of the Policy and Community Engagement Unit at New York County Defender Services. We are a public defender office in Manhattan. And we represent people from all over the city. But obviously most of our clients are from Manhattan and live here. So, And
What's your relationship with like the Legal Aid Society?
so there's 3 institutional providers that specifically have a contract to take cases, indigent representation cases in Manhattan. The Legal Aid Society is one, New York Defender Services of Harlem is another, and then New York County Defender Services. I think we have about, I'd say like 30% of the cases in Manhattan. So yeah, they're our sister organization. We work really closely with them. We work very closely with them on this legislation as we do with neighboring defender services.
Right. Thanks.
Okay, so, just by way of background, I myself was a public defender in Manhattan. Actually, I started off at the Legal Aid Society, so, in Manhattan, a trial attorney for many years, starting in 2012. And then migrated over to NYCDS to start doing policy work in 2021. So for the last 4 years, I've been working on this campaign. And
Yes.
about a year ago, I brought on board this incredible college student to be very heard.
Yes, hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Cortez. I'm one of the community engagement interns at New York County Defender Services. Thank you guys so much for being here and for taking the time to listen to us today. So I'm gonna give some background as to the importance of this bill and also some contextualization for the landscape of why the mental health crisis is so important right now. So like Casey mentioned, we are here to present on the Treatment Court Expansion Act, which is run by the Treatment Not Jail Coalition. So this bill would expand and modernize New York's network of treatment courts, reducing our reliance on prisons and jails, and also directly addressing the mental health crisis in New York City. So we wanted to specifically connect and target Community Court 6 because your district itself is home to a number of homeless shelters as well as Bellevue Hospital. But our goal is for all of you to leave here today with a better sense of what our campaign is, what treatment courts in general are, and then also how you can get involved with our campaign or continue to hear updates in addition to our advocacy day, which I'm going to talk a little bit about at the end. You can advance to the next slide.
Oh, wait, I have it, sorry.
Okay, great. So the root of the issue and what we're seeking to address is the mental health crisis. Providing treatment for mental health issues reduces recidivism and enhances public safety, but I want to give some facts just to contextualize the current landscape of the mental health crisis. So 1 in 5 New Yorkers have a mental health diagnosis, and over half of the New York City jail population, 82% which of women, have a mental health diagnosis. And the proportion of those with a serious mental health illness has skyrocketed from just 10% in 2017 to 21% as of now in 2025. New York's jails and
Can I just ask,
prisons.
it says it's over half of the NYC jail, 80% of women in jail, is that what it's saying? Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
it's actually about 60% now.
So New York's jails and prisons are some of the largest psychiatric facilities in the country. Rikers Island in itself houses more people with mental illness than any psychiatric hospital in the United States. So if you look on the side, less than 20% of those incarcerated receive mental health services. And one extreme example of limited access to mental health services is the practice of deadlocking. This has been in practice for a while, but it's come to light about a year ago, specifically in Rikers Island, which is New York City's largest jail facility. So deadlocking refers to being locked essentially in a cell, usually within a mental health unit, and being unable to leave for any reason. It often involves a loss of privileges and the denial of access to basic services like showers, phone calls, recreation, and medical care. So essentially it is a form of solitary confinement, and it's used as a disciplinary measure. So individuals in deadlocking may be locked in their cell for weeks or for months at a time. Individuals, they're going without human contact, without sunlight, and their medical treatment during this time is unpresent. And medical treatment involves having no access to mental health treatment of any kind. Deadlocking in itself is inherently traumatizing, and many individuals have been reported screaming and banging on walls to be released, smearing feces on cells, and experiencing extreme mental health breakdowns. So this obviously goes against the minimum standards of keeping those in jail facilities safe, but it still occurs very often, and it often remains undocumented. Another thing.
Sense of what percentage of the time this occurs, the deadlocking?
It's,
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, it's very interesting because it apparently was so very widespread until about a year ago when a correctional health services worker finally blew the whistle on it. And then when they blew the whistle on it, everyone started coming out being like, yeah, this has been happening everywhere.
Wow.
And it's been happening for years and years. And then even 6 months later, the Board of Correction, which is the oversight agency, went to do an audit. And they, even then, like while they were just touring, saw it happening and they were like, I thought we were shining spotlight on this and we weren't doing this anymore, so.
Thank you.
yeah, so it's, like I said, it's inherently traumatizing, but what adds to the layer of it is that while people are being deadlocked, they have no access to the mental health services that they require. And this is obviously going to exacerbate the mental health experiences and disorders that they are experiencing. When we're talking about limited mental health services, I also just want to bring to light the recent deaths at Rikers Island. As of this past September, a reported 12 people have died in New York City TOC custody this year. Many deaths have also been a result of suicides, and not all of those go reported. A recent report from the summer of 2023 also found evidence that the DOC has only reported to the public or press 68 of the at least 120 deaths that have occurred on its watch since 2014. So as I've illustrated, the mental health care that people do receive is substandard, but it's also incredibly limited in nature, and it doesn't reach the majority of the people who are at Rikers Island. So it's no wonder that jails lead to increased rates of reoffending. People are left traumatized without the resources that they need and decompensated, which results in the further committing of crimes once they are released. We can advance to the next slide. So now I want to talk about how incarceration in itself is also incredibly expensive. In New York City, it costs about $507,000 a year to keep just one person in jail. At the state level, the number is still huge, around $115,000 per person each year. When we compare these numbers to community-based options, we find that supportive housing costs $25,000 to $50,000 per year, depending on the program. A forensic act team also costs about $8,800 in the first year and drops to roughly $2,200 in following years. So just to expand a little bit on what the forensic assertive community treatment is, which is the acronym for FACT. It expands on the Proven Act, which is assertive community treatment model, and it serves people with serious mental health illnesses who are involved in the criminal justice system. It specifically is targeting people with co-occurring substance use or physical health issues. So essentially, it's integrating mental health care with justice system support, targeting risk factors that are linked to arrest and recidivism. The goals are specifically to divert individuals from incarceration, reduce repeated offense, reduce repeated arrests, reduce hospitalizations and costs, and also enhance public safety by providing effective behavioral health interventions. So from these numbers here, you can see that we're spending 10 times more, sometimes even 20 times more to incarcerate someone than to support them in the community. The second important point is public safety. So research shows incarceration doesn't make people less likely to offend. It often does quite the opposite. People who are incarcerated are actually more likely to be arrested after they are released. On the other hand, diversion cuts rearrest rates by about 50%. So diversion isn't just cheaper, it's also more effective for both individuals and for the public safety of New York overall. So I'm now going to turn to Casey and she's going to talk more about the specifics of the bill, the Treatment Court Expansion Act.
So our bill aims to address public safety, make our communities healthier and safer, and save a lot of money through the expansion and streamlining and modernization of what are known as treatment courts. What are treatment courts? First of all, they go by very many different names, like specialty courts, problem-solving courts, diversion courts, drug courts, mental health courts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the fact that they're all called with different names speaks to the lack of statewide guidance and the need for more clear, uniform legislation on this. But the principle really is the same. At the core, all of these different models aim to divert people from jail and prison sentences and sort of take them out of a normal litigation-oriented, trial-oriented process when they become arrested, and instead try to figure out what's going on with them if they have an underlying root cause, identify that by a clinical evaluation and then figure out if there is a way to treat it and if it can be safely treated in the community. It allows people to avoid jail and prison and also criminal convictions and resolve their case by completing a treatment mandate. So this is not unprecedented. We have an extensive system of treatment courts. Most notably, we in 2009 created statewide drug courts. We passed legislation called drug law reform, which did two things. First, it repealed Rockefeller drug sentencing laws. And then also it required every county in the state to open up a drug diversion court. It was really revolutionary at the time, but 15, 16 years later, we recognize that there's a lot of room for improvement and expansion. First, eligibility was very limited. Eligibility is almost exclusively determined based on what you're currently charged with, not like how the root cause of the substance use disorder impacted your case, but rather just what are you charged with and also what your criminal history is. And it also left no room for people who have both substance use disorders and mental health disorders, or just people who have mental health diagnoses. In the absence of any statewide legislative guidance on, that would provide parallel diversion options for mental health, many jurisdictions throughout the state have taken it upon themselves to create their own similar model for mental health without really any funding or guidance. And so we do have, 42 of these different types of mental health diversion programs in operation throughout the state that operate separately from the drug diversion courts. But the programs are not operating to scale. Usually they're very small, they're underfunded, and they're operating in silos of, completely separately from the drug diversion courts, even when there's co-occurring disorders. Mental health courts are currently available in limited geographic regions like New York City. Accessibility of those that do exist vary widely, leaving many people who have mental health challenges warehoused in jail or prison, ultimately more likely to reoffend. So what does this look like in Manhattan? So this is, again, where our office practices. So this is our area of expertise. And, this is also like the locus of a lot of different, this is where we see the mental health crisis playing out most prominently. And so in the absence of statewide guidance over the last 2 decades, our treatment court landscape has grown into a very sprawling, complex patchwork network that is as inefficient as it is under-inclusive. These are the diversion options in Manhattan. I wanted to say 2 things about this.
I have a
On
quick
one
question.
hand, yeah,
What does the word under-inclusive mean in this context?
it means that there's too many people slipping through the cracks.
Okay,
Like it's
there are gaps
It's
that are
both
not.
duplicative and overlapping, and also, there's a huge swath of people that are not getting access or who are deterred from even applying because it is just so extraordinary. It's like labyrinth
Yeah,
trying
sure.
to navigate this.
Wait,
And-
so they have to apply? It's not something that sort of the judicial machinery
No,
gears them to? Because somebody who's in a mental health crisis is probably not the
Yeah.
best person to advocate for themselves in this way.
exactly. And I think, so they, everyone has somebody who's representing them unless they're going to say, which is, very rare. So for a lot of the public defenders, we have become masters in this inordinately complex system, and we kind of have a sense of like how to navigate this. But even within our own offices, the line public defender that, doesn't understand half of this. We have to create our own specialist who has expertise in mapping all of this to know how to approach getting somebody into one of these diversion programs, because it is just so complicated. All of these different programs have different eligibility criteria, they have different funding streams. They have different staff, they have different contracts with different agencies, different judges. And so it's just it's, like I said, it's very inefficient in some ways, because you could apply to one, get rejected, then apply to another one, then get rejected, then apply to another one. And every single time you're having to undergo a whole new screening process. And at a time when we have such a massive shortage of healthcare workers and social workers to complete these screenings, it's like almost unconscionable that we're
Yeah.
putting someone through, and also it's very traumatizing for the
Yeah.
person to undergo that kind of screening, to go again and again and again and again. And
Doesn't that also delay the amount of time
And
while
that's the
you're going
other
through
big
each
problem.
application
Yes.
process?
yes, and that's the other thing, and so I mean, this is honestly, this is sort of a point of contention with the Manhattan DA's office, is that we feel like it's so, like, time is of the essence. Not just because clinically speaking, that is what gets the best results, like early intervention, when somebody is arrested because of a mental health issue. They're in crisis. That is the moment that they are in crisis and they need support right away. And so it's clinically leads to worse results, to delay. And then also, while we're waiting and these applications drag on for months and months, I mean, it's on average between 5 and 8 months before we even get through the gauntlet to even just to apply to the next stage of the court. They're waiting at Rikers Island, and we just heard about what their experience is like there. And so we're causing so much more harm by erecting all of these barriers and creating an application process that, yes, may like uncover every single stone, but also is overwrought and far too resource intensive in a system where we are very scarce on resources. I do want to say, though, that what I see here a really maddening and inefficient system, but I also see, but beneath this, a lot of really incredible, very altruistic people who have come together in a spirit of very scrappy, under-resourced collaboration, and have tried to put together a system without any support from our state. And really have just cobbled this together, and we're plugging holes where we can. And the fact that these programs exist means that all the stakeholders came to the table. We worked really hard. It's very hard to get the coordination and logistics sorted out to get these programs. So each of these do reflect a ton of really incredible work from all the stakeholders, including the courts, the public defenders, and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And I would say almost every single one of these, except for Manhattan Mental Health Court and Manhattan Diversion Court, were created in the last 4 or 5 years. So this new era of the Manhattan DA has really prioritized diversion and getting more people into this system. From our perspective, it's time now to clean this up, streamline, and create some more efficiency. Are there any other questions about what all these programs are?
When you apply, who's evaluating the application?
Yeah, well, that's, okay, so this is also a good question, and this is sort of the source, I think, the core of the source of tension between our perspective and the Manhattan DA's perspective. And I really will try to give their perspective credit. Without any legislation that confers to the judge jurisdiction to open these courts and create these programs and manage them, that authority falls to the DA's office. So like I said, on one hand, this is like all because the Manhattan DA's office has on their own volition come to the table and offered you this, in many cases funded it with their own, forfeiture funds or whatever. So but that means then they are the ones controlling the application process, and so they have this, they're risk averse, and they're very concerned with public safety, and
And there was an election.
they're, exactly, yes, I'm sure that has something to do with it, but
Just saying.
so they take their time, and so they will require, what they call like proper sessions, or. I don't know, there's different terms for them, but basically they want to literally sit across from the table from the person and. Ask them
Are they
questions.
getting a mental health evaluation from a professional who's a mental health this is my only concern. I've read everything, but I'm still a little confused.
No, that. The DAs do their own assessment, and then if they are satisfied, which takes, months of like, they also request extensive medical records, and like, they really wanna turn over every stone. Then they will refer it to, the clinician, the court contracted clinician to do a medical evaluation of the person. There's also,
It's the current state right now.
yeah, that's the currency right now, there's also.
But the clinician doesn't come first.
Yeah, no, I mean, our office usually does a clinical assessment too, that's how we kind of like assess whether or not the person has diagnosis. And then in addition, there is this is a little getting into the weeds, but city council created another like third-party agency that called the Jail Pop Review Team, which is supposed to be going into the jail facilities and doing evaluations, but that's sort of not up and running yet. But that should be happening, within, really shortly after they're admitted into, but there's no guarantee yet that the DAs will accept that. So, yes, there's a lot of people evaluating our clients. Also, when they are admitted to jail, the correctional health services does an evaluation.
While all of this is happening, they're waiting at Rikers.
Yeah, typically, not in every case. It's much longer. I mean, the process is actually much longer if they're not incarcerated because they get pushed to the. But yeah,
Even with bail reform.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like I said, so with bail reform, many people are now out, and that presents another problem because then we have to try to like triage and find, services for them while they're waiting, and which could take 9 months, like it takes a really long time, and that's a long time to go. Like I said, I believe that when somebody is arrested, that means they are in crisis. And it's like they are in desperate need of services, and I feel like we're squandering an opportunity to step in and provide like wraparound care.
I have a few questions.
Yeah.
So it kind of says it here, but, what specific screening tools will determine who's appropriate for diversion? Who's too high risk?
So that's a good question. So at our legislation, so whether somebody's high risk, I think you mean like from a public safety perspective. Okay, so right now, it's not, these are all ad hoc, so it's not really codified in any way, it's not standardized. The legislation that we would be proposing would lay out different criteria for determining that, and there's, so it would be, the person has a diagnosis. And we have a definition for that they must either have substance use disorder or serious mental illness, basically.
Are there certain like categories of violent felonies that preclude anybody from this?
Yes, class A violent felonies, and also, class B, in addition, class B sex offenses. But that could be, they're presumptively excluded unless the DA's office affirmatively consents to their being considered. Otherwise, every case can be considered on a case-by-case basis, and rather than focusing eligibility on the category of charges or what someone's criminal history is, our feeling is that it should just be a public safety determination that a judge can make and consider all of the circumstances. The DA can bring anything to light they want to bring to light. The defense can provide any mitigation that they think is relevant. And then the clinician can also weigh in and have an opinion about that. So that we're not excluding people arbitrarily, like, we have a system currently that does that, that bases eligibility on these like categories of offenses, and it has been this widespread source of frustration for judges, for defense attorneys, and also for DAs. So that's,
Okay, yeah, I'd also be concerned about the capacity. In other words, is there gonna be
Yes.
enough, like, my concern would be even if the system, let's say it was working the way that you had intended,
yeah,
there could be people that slip through that shouldn't get it because of a capacity issue.
yeah,
Trying
So-
to have beds. and-
Yeah.
yeah, so that is an excellent question, that is the question that we get the most. Actually, here, I can go ahead and move into the next slide. The short answer to your question is that yes, we are taking into consideration capacity, when in admissions determinations.
Wait, capacity of what?
So this was a request from the unified court system that we add into the admissions criteria, a determination that the person's qualifying diagnosis can be adequately treated by existing and available community-based providers.
Whether that's an inpatient or
Yeah.
supportive housing or.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think the judges probably from the statute could interpret that to mean supportive housing, but generally speaking, I think we're talking about like the treatment providers directly. And yeah, so
There's for sure not enough of now.
no, I mean, we do expect more coming online, and every time we talk to the OMH, the Office of Mental Health, they're like, we got this, don't worry, it's coming. And they do tout these things, you know, like, we opened 42 new ACT teams in the last 2 years and 1,000 new supportive housing beds, and I wouldn't say that we've like noticed a discernible influx of resources over the last few years, but it does take a while for these things to get up and running. I don't know how aware you are of this, but 2 years ago, the governor did appropriate $1 billion. Most of that is going to supportive housing, and a lot of it is capital construction, so it does take years for that to get open. But we think that there is more on the horizon. We're being told that there is more on the horizon, and in addition, New York City continuously increases its funding for treatment providers and supportive housing, so, we think that we're optimistic that there's going to be more coming online soon. That said, we also want a dedicated funding stream for this legislation so that it can be implemented right away and we're not just waiting around. And so we see the budget request in two parts. There is a court operations component of this, which would cover the cost of hiring, staff within these courts. One of the best features of these courts are the case managers and the really dedicated experts in the treatment landscape, in the housing landscape, who know how to sign someone up for supportive housing and talk about elaborate process. It is just really extraordinarily complicated. Yeah. And so, if you ever go to one of these courts and you see them in action, it is incredible, like how much wraparound care that the person gets just from that alone. The staff that are doing the case management. So that court operations would cover the cost of case management, the cost of hiring clinicians to do the evaluations and make recommendations about treatment planning. And then also probably it would also cover the cost of peers, hiring peers, which are like, you know, more and more seen as a very integral part of the puzzle. So the unified court system estimates that full implementation of this legislation would cost $51.4 million. Just from a court operation standpoint, this is similar to what they received in 2009 to get drug courts up and running. And with adjusting for inflation, which is actually really something when you compare just the last 15, 16 years, how much everything has increased. And then, but we also, again, we really want to dedicate money to the treatment providers who are already existing in these networks, right? Like, we already have contracts with them or make referrals to them. They're like our go-to. And we want to make sure that they are able to absorb any influx without completely collapsing under the, backlogs and whatever. So we are asking for $75 million to them, which again is like parallel with
Yeah.
what was requested in the 2009 drug law reform. So again, I talked about the resource analysis that will hopefully give all of these courts a little bit more breathing room in just saying like, we've got to close down, or like, we can't accept any new people right now, we're overwhelmed right now as it is, or we can't handle anymore for now, without buckling under the strain, and also won't set people up for failure. Just something that you mentioned bail reform. We've learned that when you pass anything criminal justice related, it comes under a microscope by, certain media outlets. And so we're very cognizant of the fact that we'll have to really get things right, and that really good.
Is there a way to ramp this up slowly?
So that is what we're expecting to do. We're, kind of hoping that availability of resources will allow courts to ramp up slowly as the treatment becomes more available and if they feel more comfortable taking more cases on. In addition to that, we've also been working on designing a rollout schedule with the court system where like each county, they would go county by county, and each county would have to like meet certain benchmarks and then apply to be certified to the court. So, yes. So yes, we do have a fiscal ask, which is why it's in Senate Finance and Assembly Ways and Means right now, and we didn't get the green light to move beyond it. And so this budget cycle, starting in January, we will be asking for the governor and the Senate and the Assembly to provide this funding and pass this legislation. I will say that we're also aware of this like very precarious, very strange economic circumstances that we find ourselves in. It's really hard to know exactly how the proposed Medicaid cuts and the rising cost of healthcare will play out for our state. But I will say that this is ultimately a significant cost savings measure. And the 2009 reforms proved that. They were passed at the height of the Great Recession, when we were also facing, we were in even more uncharted territory. The state was facing a $16 billion budget shortfall right now. The last projection was $9 billion, but I think that we're expecting more revenue to cover that. So all to say that we couldn't need that, it's incredibly timely, like we need to create more efficiencies in our criminal legal system, in our carceral system. And this is an opportunity to do it when we're really starting to think about like how to create efficiencies everywhere.
Can you just address the cost savings? I mean, I understand the concept that you take the money that you would be spending on incarceration and you put it into treatment and housing.
Yeah,
It doesn't work that way in the
Yeah.
real world. And if you reduce one prisoner at Rikers, you don't save $500,000. You have an efficient operation that. So,
well, it's also coming at a very interesting time because we are supposed to be closing Rikers
Yeah.
and moving into the borough-based jail system, which promises to be far more efficient. And so it's like happening at this moment where we need to reduce the jail population anyway. We are closing Rikers, we're completely shuttering that system. We're starting a new system that is expected to save billions of dollars a year by being more efficient in the aerobics jails. Once they are constructed, again, like Brooklyn is the earliest and it's only it's a year out, so.
And Manhattan is,
And
they haven't finished destroying, like. Start, like, that space is not gonna be done.
yeah,
But what I'm saying is, I mean, the.
it doesn't happen right away, it's not like.
We're still
you
spending,
take-
we're gonna be spending money on both for a while. I mean, it's
Yeah.
gonna be an overlap.
Yeah, I mean, that is true, but ultimately, okay, so there's there's three ways to think about the savings. One is it's reduced incarceration, and you're right that it's not like immediate, it's a little disingenuous to be like, we're gonna take the $500,000 that we saved. Although there's pressure from all sides to start closing prisons, jails. The system itself is just collapsing. I don't know how aware you all are of the docks crisis as well in the upstate prison system. But, last year we started closing prisons, like it is happening. It's not like this is politically unviable to close prisons. It's, believe me when I tell you, there is like a ton of political will behind actually closing these institutions and migrating towards a alternative to a incarceration model. There's also the cost savings of reduced recidivism, which is significant. When you reduce recidivism by 50%, there's a way that, well, not me, but like, analysts that, put a price tag on like the cost of committing a violent felony. And then there's also the collateral savings of keeping people in the community.
Yeah.
They are then able to work. They are able to provide childcare to their children, their families, be of service to their community members. And then there's also the cost of healthcare. We see there's a lot of cost savings. The Center for Court Innovation has done more work on this, but like there's cost savings just in providing community-based healthcare as opposed to institutional healthcare. Like when we provide health care to people who are in prison, our state pays 100% of that, and it's terrible healthcare, first of all. And it's very expensive. It's like a very inefficient way to deliver healthcare. Versus when somebody is out in the community, they're on Medicaid, so we share the cost with our government. But anyway, we'll go back to the question, how much we share. Yeah, so it's widely believed that even the fact that we're not immediately seeing prisons closing, that there's a huge, enormous cost savings benefit. And then from my perspective, there's sort of incalculable savings of just like streamlining and efficiency. And the value of having one clinical assessment, one application process, one case manager for one person and not eight, it's like, that's the thing that just really drives me crazy is seeing all this inefficiency.
Go ahead, please, you have a question.
I have a question. If someone gets arrested and they have mental health diagnosis. You talked earlier about like pre-reports and stuff. Or behavioral health diagnosis, how would they get into some sort of disability of that kind? How would they get from the regular court system, criminal court to pre-report?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of what we were talking about in the last slide about the patchwork system that we have is just so convoluted that it's hard to know. And even lawyers, like we have to have a specialist in our office who's like stays up to date on all the different eligibility criteria and who to talk to and what needs to be done, because I mean, even a regular trial attorney can't.
You have to like request it from the judge, then you go to pre-report or something like that?
So under our proposal, yes, you would request it in front of the judge. You would say, I would like to be screened by a clinician for this treatment court program. And then they would adjourn the case, they would assign someone to screen you, and then, you know, at the next court date, the report would come back and it would say like, this person has this diagnosis, they contributed to their underlying offense. This is, if we wanted to treat it, this is what it would look like, this is what we think could address the underlying offense, and this is what we would recommend. And then the
So-
defense attorney and the prosecution would also weigh in and be like, and, you know, I know he has a criminal record, but like, that's because this was untreated and, you know.
When you go to the treatment court
Mhm.
and if you go for the treatment court, if you get referred to that and you get evaluated and stuff like that, there's no cost to the evaluation, and are the penalties different than if they were to go to criminal court?
If they, that's a good question. You mean if they go through treatment and then they don't succeed, if they fail, or if they, worst case scenario, they get rearrested, what would the penalties be like?
Yeah,
So it's a good question. I mean, historically, the penalties have been higher. But that's starting to change. There's been a culture shift in the drug courts and the mental health courts that exist. That really have, now they're less likely to punish people for trying and failing than they historically have been, but that is, you know, when the drug courts first started, that was like a hallmark feature. It was like, okay, you can try this, but like, you know, if you fail, you're gonna get hit over the head and it's gonna be worse for you. And so we have seen declining in drug courts. We saw a huge decline in participation, like people would just stop the fines, they had,
Cause if they failed, it was worse.
yeah, and they would just say, I know I can do 2 years, so I'm just gonna stay where I am. And I'm gonna get out and that's fine, and
And you know, some of the concerns that are raised right now is that, most people would not have to plead before they are admitted to the program. Some people have to plead guilty. They get
yeah,
they get an agreement that says if you succeed in the program, then you can,
It's
you can
basically
destroy-
vacates, right?
yes, okay, so this is the traditional drug court model that was pioneered in the, you know, like 90s and 2000s. Was that you sign up for a contract, you plead guilty up front, and then there is like an alternative sentence. So if you are successful, your case will either be dismissed or reduced to a misdemeanor, and like the sentence will be time served. Or if you fail, then you're looking at the maximum prison sentence or something. And so again, this was where we saw this practice of people getting penalized for not succeeding in drug court, and then we tried different models. And so, for example, in Buffalo, they created an opioid intervention court that was like, we can't keep doing what we're doing in drug court. Nobody is even interested anymore. And yet we have this massive opioid epidemic playing out in our streets. So they were like, we're not gonna require a plea. There's no like, you know, you put your case on pause, you waive speedy trial time, that you just enter into the program immediately. Because early intervention gets the best clinical results and it saves lives. So like right from arraignment, you know, we'll flag people and try to get them services immediately, connect them with services. You don't have to plead guilty. And it's been very successful. And so at this point, I think this is a good moment for reflection and to ask, you know, why is this only being in operation in opioid courts, which are now, you know, there's like a dozen opioid courts throughout the state. I think there's you know, there is some underlying racial component to this because opioid courts serve mostly white people and drug courts serve a very diverse population. And so there's like a fear around like introducing a more voluntary basis kind of model, in our perspective, into a more diverse high population. So for this reason and many others, I mean, really, we believe that at least for nonviolent felonies, that you should be allowed to enter into these programs briefly. Because it just cuts out all of this screening process.
And
Plea
you're
means
saying-
not plea.
Yes,
Yes.
I understand what it means, but you're saying, we were talking about, obviously, this was really relevant in some of our previous discussions. But you're saying so that sort of pauses the clock
Yes,
For the-
it pauses the clock.
for the speedy trial.
Exactly.
On both sides.
Yes, it says, I mean, the point is like, let's put the criminal case on hold. Like, no one's harmed in the criminal case, there will be no motions. There will, whatever, everything stops. But, and let's figure out what's going on with this person, and also, let's make sure this person is stabilized and
Right.
of sound mind and judgment before they're like entering into a plea where we're already like, we're flagging them and saying like, they don't know what they're talking about, they don't know what they're doing, but let's plead guilty here to this, like, violent or, serious.
Okay, so just to follow up on that, because one of the questions I had was, what are, sort of, if there is such a thing, sort of the typical, like, what are people typically being arrested for that you think would be diverted to this? Is it, like, you said nonviolent felonies, is that what you're thinking, and what?
No,
what
I
does that
actually
mean?
think there's a whole spectrum and. You'd be shocked at the success that we've had with the most serious cases. Attempted murder, there was even recently somebody graduated with a homicide. Yeah, I mean, really serious, the most serious cases that you can imagine. And
So it can be violent felonies.
it can be violent felonies, the legislation would draw a line for whether or not you have to plead guilty upfront. And the reason for that is a compromise that we've already made, hearing the DAs that's their main source of objection. They don't want to, they wanna still be able to like, turn over every stone and like scour through them, but they also really object to people entering these programs without pleading guilty upfront.
So they don't want, who is the mafia don who, pretended to be insane.
Yeah, well, that's.
That's in the back of their head sometimes.
I know,
I'm sorry, that's going way back, but.
Yeah, maybe, they're like, they think that they can catch someone malingering, yeah.
So DA is saying every case you have to plead before you enter? Even
I think that's their
even
position. I can ask
non-violent,
them, but I believe that is.
no, even
Yeah.
non-violent felonies that,
Yes,
like, they have to plead something.
you have to plead, you have to plead to the ties.
Basically, I mean, some people think that having this over your, like,
Oh, like,
Over
wait,
like-
this guilty.
I mean, you gotta complete the it's actually, it helps people complete the
Right.
program, because
Instead of-
otherwise,
That was one of the
Yeah.
recommendations was,
Yeah.
so there,
Yeah.
it depends on the case. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not always gonna differ.
But
some-
addiction is an illness,
Yes,
mental health is an illness. And people are not magically fixed, even if they go through a drug rehab program, or they get medication.
yeah.
And services, like, this is very complicated,
Mhm.
and so I just wanna go back just a second. And go back to the foundation of how all these people get into this system, meaning. Why do we have such a high mental health illness issue? Why do we have so much addiction? Like, what is society doing wrong? And do you partner with anyone that's helping preempt these problems?
Just to answer part of that, because I wanted to also point out that, and it just so. One of the ways that people get into these programs is that the service providers themselves have court advocates. And they are very good at going into the courts and finding these
So they
people
have,
and saying, hey, man, and
so
look,
they
and-
have financial incentive.
yeah, exactly, and they're being paid by the city or whoever to like go and enroll people, basically, that's how their
Which-
funding works.
It does not,
Well,
it doesn't. you know, it doesn't obviate the reality of the financial, like, it's still cheaper to do that than.
Yeah, of course.
But it is an incentive that we should be aware
Right, I just wanted to put that in the perspective of how there's always, I'm a little bit surprised that the system is still as chaotic as the way you're describing it, because you know, treatment courts have been around since the nineties,
of.
late nineties, it's gonna be over 25 years. And you know, all ATIs have been operating in New York City for more than 2 decades.
Yeah,
And like, the judges are very aware about, like, unless you're a brand new judge, you know, you're very aware about who the providers are, what they'll do, who the people are in your court, and how does it, like, it's very kind of clear. And so there are people, the same, the service providers themselves are there finding these people, their whole mission is to go and find these.
Yeah.
It can be hard, and yes, the eligibility criteria can be a deterrent, but if it's strict, you gotta find someone who meets,
Wow.
checks every box, and then, but there's also a lot of advocacy that's happening with the judges and all of that, so it's a very complex picture of what's
And
happening.
I'm really talking about to prevent people from
Prevent.
ending up in the system.
okay, well, for that is that's another conversation, but have you guys done a presentation on Be Heard?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we did in the Health and
In Health
Environment
and
Committee.
Environment Committee, we had that presentation.
Yeah, so that's another campaign that we also are supporting
That
the,
one is on pause for funding reasons,
They have
like they're
funding
not
levels.
expanding anything, so they told us.
well, maybe not under this administration, but that is.
Well, yeah, I'm
one of
hoping the new
big
administration
topics.
will bring, like, will fund
Yeah,
that
I think
program,
that's
but
really
as
great.
of now.
No,
under
we're
the-
very
yeah,
impressed with their program.
Yeah,
Yes.
Because they're really addressing on the street now, in the moment, before crimes, mental
Yeah.
health issues.
yeah, like
So-
once you call that 911 call and once you identify that as a mental health, the Be Heard team can be the first ones to respond with, that's what
Yeah,
they just,
Social
right.
workers and mental
The
health.
problem is their lack, like you said, lack of funding, not enough
Yeah.
staff. And under the current administration, it is not expanding is what they told us, like there's zero
Yeah.
plans of expanding it. Now, I'm hoping come January, when we have a new administration, that program at least will be reevaluated, figure out what's working and how to make it better and expand.
Yeah,
But as of now, Be Heard is on pause. As in, it's not expanding, it is.
Yeah,
it
I
is, and
know,
that's
I
it.
know.
To the city, it's just
Um,
not-
because I will say that we see, from our perspective, we see a lot of clients who could have been just rerouted. And instead, the police get called and everything escalates. And suddenly
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
felony because it's an assault on a police officer because they were resisting being taken to a shelter or something.
And the other
it's
aspect
like-
they mentioned is if you are in that crisis and you see a police officer, that exacerbates your
Yes.
mental illness many times.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
seeing that police officer is the last thing you want if you're in that
Right.
state.
Yeah,
So I don't wanna cut you off, that there was more you were gonna
no,
say.
no, go
but-
ahead.
So I have a couple of thoughts about kind of looking at this. We're talking about this from a system perspective, but I'm also thinking about as like just a human being, and I'm going back to what you said about the sort of basically like solitary, the sort of deadlock.
Yeah,
And I think about that, both how traumatizing that must be. But I also recognize, like, I can't imagine that honestly, but I also am looking at it from the perspective of a Department of Corrections officer who is dealing with somebody who they may well be afraid of.
yeah, they're not trained.
And they are not trained and they are overworked and they've got a good union. But, you know, like, they have a job I don't want.
Right.
And so I have sympathy. So, what?
Yeah.
You think? No, I sort of, I mean, I guess that's my comment is that I think anything that can make lives better for both
Yeah.
sides of that would just, it's such a win-win-win-win-win.
I think so too. Yeah, I mean, that is another thing to talk about sometimes, especially in light of the strike that happened last February with
Yes.
those prison corrections officers. Who are saying like, one of their complaints was like, we're being asked to do social work jobs and we're
Right.
not
You're not
trained to
trained
do
for
it.
Right.
And
And they're
then,
not hired, like, it's like not a screening, part of the screening
no,
for, like, when they're being hired. you
no,
know,
and in
like-
fact, like, they can't recruit anybody.
Right,
They can't
Right.
recruit anybody to work in those jobs
And-
anymore.
this is partly why,
Yeah.
right? So I think
So,
there's
right.
so many things wrong with that dynamic, so I'm sure you're aware of that, but
Yeah, I know. We've thought, our campaign has thought many times about like approaching the corrections officers union and being like, would you consider, but I don't know. That
So,
might be a bridge too far.
yeah, but that actually leads me to, I actually have a couple of questions, but I'll stop at one or, so I had heard, and this is kind of a political, like, election, like, candidate promise thing, that, Mamdani would like to, there are homeless outreach teams,
Mhm.
and obviously it's not 100% overlap, but there are certainly issues, like homeless people have a high incidence of mental health issues.
Yes.
And they typically work in teams, like with social workers, and I don't know, there's names, but I
Yeah,
don't
it's
remember.
the SOS.
Yeah, I think that's right. And they're, like, there are cops and social workers.
Yeah.
And Mondani is proposing removing the police from those teams to make it kind of just social workers.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of wondering, I know this is not your area of expertise, but I heard about that and I was just like, but this is like a podcast, and it was like, yeah, and there are people that are just not gonna get approached. And like, it's sort of the most, probably the people that are providing the most risk to public safety and need the most help are the ones who are gonna be least likely to be approached, because I'm a social worker, like, if I don't have police backup, I may not approach this
Yeah.
person and build trust. And so I'm just wondering if that's something you've heard anything about, if you know anything.
Yeah, and this goes back to the Be Heard, so
Yeah.
there's a whole coalition called the Correct Crisis Intervention New York City group, who might have been the ones who you spoke to, but CCIT NYC, and they are trying to remove police from the Be Heard response teams, for the same reasons we were talking about. It's very police and it's very triggering. And one thing that they look to or point to is that there have been pilots of this in major cities, Portland and Denver. And it's been,
Portland, major city. Sorry.
it's true.
Sorry.
I know.
No offense.
But it's like the statistics are really wild. I mean, they're like only one time in years has anybody called for backup.
Well,
So,
Be Heard said they use the fire department.
yes,
Yeah.
So that the fire
Yeah.
department folks go in with the social worker people, so they're not alone, it's a
So-
team.
So it's because firefighters are more.
Less threatening.
Yeah, they're less
But also
threatening.
they can manage emergencies, they do that.
That has something to do with how the cops act too.
Well, they don't know, they're just not trained, they don't know how to do it.
I'll let you know also that the chair of our Housing and Homelessness Committee is on this
Yeah.
meeting. He's there remotely. He may have some questions for you. And Sherman with the, District Attorney's Office, I know you're here just as an observer. You can see why we want to hear from your office, but if you have anything to contribute now, you'd be welcome to speak.
Wait, can I ask one other thing?
Of
My
course.
last thing, and maybe I'm queuing him up, but I'm just curious about, like, obviously you're getting a very receptive response here. I think, right, don't wanna speak for the committee, but I'm just curious, like, what negative responses have you gotten from other people to whom, other groups to whom you have presented?
So, we have gotten some pushback around pre-plea for some of the reasons that I think you all have identified. It's just like, it's a leap of faith, right? Like, it's much, I'm sure everyone would, well, I should say, like, the DA and the court would feel more comfortable if like every case was like closed and they had, prison hanging over someone's head. But it comes at a cost. And it slows down the admissions process significantly. It also deters a lot of people from applying. That means non-citizens can't participate. So again, that's a point of contention. In the early days, I think people were worried about public safety and we're like, I'm not sure if it would be appropriate for people who are charged with violent felonies to participate, but that has not been we haven't gotten that criticism very much lately, in the recent years. I think people are really coming down. First of all, we've had tremendous success with people who are charged with violent felonies go through these courts, and so I think there's some like public profile and narrative shifting around like what it means to commit a violent felony, like what
The violent felons that
Yeah.
need mental health intervention. Or they have some, like, my concern is, are you just saying bye-bye, go out on the street, and then I want you to show up for this program here at 7 o'clock? You know what I'm saying?
No, I think it's way more, so the oversight and supervision is very
Yeah, that's
intense.
my question.
Very intense. First of all, nobody just gets released. There has to be an escort, which is logistically probably the hardest thing to coordinate, this whole system. And yeah, there has to be like an escort to bring the person to their new housing situation. There has to be like some kind of housing setup. There has to have to be like everything turned on, ready to go, a place available for treatment. And then, and especially in the beginning, people get, have to kind of like once a week, every 2 weeks, like they're very, they get a
Have you
lot.
ever had an instance where you took on a violent offender or a murderer?
Not a
And you're like,
murderer, that's like very
Okay,
rare.
not
The only
happened,
people
okay.
who've ever been charged with homicides have successfully completed.
But I'm saying,
Okay,
you're
a violent
releasing
offense, yeah.
them, you escort them, they go to their new home, you set up the services, they have to go to court once or twice every few weeks. Have they ever, while through this process, reoffended in a violent way?
I'm sure that has happened. I can't think of an example. I'm sure it has happened though. We do not have 100% success rate. It's like, that's.
If you told us that, we would know you were lying.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I wanna follow up to that question? So how would your approach take a borderline case and be able to handle that? Like there's concern, like Gloria said about the possibly, something slipping through like that. How does your approach deal with a borderline case like that?
it would leave it in the hands of the judge to make the determination about whether it's an appropriate case for diversion. And then if they do reoffend, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're automatically terminated from the program. It just would mean like they're likely going to be terminated from the program. So, we have like, there's due process set out so that, there would have to be like some inquiry into whether the person really did there's proof that they.
Actually, committed.
Yeah, and like what the underlying circumstances are, and actually, a lot of times when people reoffend. It happens very commonly actually in drug court. And they just get rearrested for things are theft,
Yeah.
and in the early days, there's like a very hard line, like, okay, any new arrests are kicked out, we're sentencing you. And there has been a major culture shift actually, and now, of course, we're very much more circumspect about like, why did you do this? Was it because we failed you? Like, did we not give you the right services? Or is this a normal part of treatment? Is that like you relapse and you do it, 7 times before? Yeah.
So that's if someone reoffends while they're still. in the
Yeah, while
program.
they're in the
And
program.
what happens when they've graduated and then they offend again? Can they go back into the program?
And that's a good question, and technically, yes. Yes, there's no bar on how many times they can do the program, but will they provide with?
My guess is the
They would
judge
get
is,
accepted.
yeah, the judge is gonna be a lot less.
Yeah,
So to follow up on what you just said, like the culture shift of like when you're getting rearrested and everything. Going back to similar to that, like you also mentioned that it was in Buffalo regarding the.
the opioids, yeah.
Oh, yeah, where having that threat of that plea actually made people not want to use that program or something like that.
Yeah,
So when it comes to this, isn't that same thing gonna happen if you like, everybody has to like plea, isn't that gonna deter
that is
People
why. I-
from
That's
using this
exactly-
program?
Yes, and that's exactly one of the really, that's why we feel so strongly about this, one of the main reasons is that. From our perspective, we're the ones representing the clients, we're the defense provider, so we hear the conversation about should I do this or not? And we so often hear people who are just like, I can't take that risk, and I don't like, maybe it's that they have heard the reputation and like the, programs in the past that were like, would hit you over the head if you made one mistake. Maybe it's because they don't have faith in themselves.
Yeah.
They've never tried treatment. They're like, I can't guarantee that I'm gonna do this. And, the mandate is like 12 to 18 months. And that is, I mean, for people who can't string together like 1 week of sobriety,
Yeah.
that's so daunting. And to say like, okay, and maximum sentence is gonna be like 7 years. That's just.
It's not a
huge
risk.
deterrent.
So then that is a deterrent, but like, and so you said there's actual evidence that shows that, right? Like from that.
From the opioid crisis.
Right, right, so we have data, not evidence, I get, data.
Yes.
We have data that shows that.
Yes.
So why do people still wanna use this?
I think, you'll have to ask them and have to use on this. And I think there's like a discomfort. It would be a huge paradigm shift. And there's you're relinquishing a lot of control.
Yeah.
It's a leap of faith. So I think the courts and the DAs feel a little, like that's very, outside of their comfort zone. But we feel like it's, that's the point of making transformative change, just like pushing people outside of their comfort zone. And we have done, in fact, one of the programs that is on, in Manhattan. Well, anyway, the behavioral health court, they started like 3.5 years ago. It's a small program, but they're a free plea model.
I don't remember what that is.
It's called, it takes place in Midtown. Do you guys know about the Midtown Community Court?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's specifically in the Midtown, in the Midtown Community Court.
We have a presentation.
So, yeah, the Midtown Community Court is wonderful. It's a wonderful program. They started off just serving misdemeanors, they've expanded. And they're free plea, and the judge would say, like, I didn't believe that it would work. I was really skeptical at first. I got this assignment, this like was handed to me. And now he's like, wants to open the court every day of the week, like, true believer.
Yeah.
Can I talk about crime victims? They all have an attitude toward this, and sometimes they may have some input into the prosecutor's action.
Yes, so we do have some victims groups that are sort of outwardly sort of the coalition. We've also done a lot of presentations and outreach to them, and I think there's some trepidation around it, but mostly we've had a really receptive audience with them, and generally speaking, survivors of crime are, people feel differently about it, so I don't wanna like generalize too much, but when they're polled, survivors of crime overwhelmingly support diversion in the abstract. I don't know if that might be different in their own case, but they're. Yeah, it's just, I think everyone at this point has recognized the utility of incarceration to rehabilitate. And that is the most important thing, that they don't want it to go. Yeah.
And so in New York, we have, the equivalent of the insanity defense. Not responsible by reason of mental disease or defect.
Yes,
You have to claim that you didn't know right from wrong, or you didn't understand the consequence of what you were doing, right?
yeah.
Um, that's different from what you have to say here. So in this case, for the diversion, you can be perceived as a moral actor, who understood right from wrong, and yet you acted the way you did anyway. That strikes me as a problem for people. You're shaking your head.
No, I'm not shaking, like, I'm shaking it like I'm curious what you mean.
So,
Yes.
not
good
the
to- right,
I was like-
NGRI or, not responsible. First of all, it's very rarely used because it's not like, oh, okay, then you'll be diverted to community care. If you go that route, you will be diverted to a forensic psychiatric institution in perpetuity. So I've never. I think there's one.
Better than the electric chair, but maybe not much.
Yeah, it's really actually horrendous. That is a whole other topic, but yeah, so nobody ever actually uses that. And it's also very hard to prove because
Yes.
of that you have to know,
Standard.
right, that you have to have known, and many times like the person will think that what they're doing is righteous, and then they see the police and they still are afraid of the police and will run away, and that's it. You've lost the fence because that evinces,
Shows.
I know.
yeah, right.
And I see Sherman,
Consciousness of guilt.
Sherman has his hand up.
I will, just give me a moment, and I will,
Sherman will give you a voice.
you should be able to speak now, Sherman.
Sherman,
Is Sherman?
Sherman is- he is with the DA's office. I think it may be called community affairs or community engagement, and if Sherman, speaks, we'll know.
Sherman's just a.
Yeah,
No.
Sherman, are you able to speak?
Maybe he's writing in the. There.
Well, we'll come back.
All right, well, Sherman, I hope that I am being fair to the Manhattan DA's office. I really am trying to give their point of view. Um,
Okay, now. I'll just give both Shermans.
Sorry,
Yeah.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was on my computer and I was having technical difficulties. Thank you so much for that presentation. I am from Community Affairs. We're officially called the Community Partnerships Unit, and I'm in the Community Engagement team. I cover this area. Well, I am not a lawyer, so I can't speak to some of the particular processes that you brought up, but I do have a couple of things I'd like to note. First is that DA Alvin Bragg created the Alternatives to Incarceration Division, and there are pathways deputies in each trial bureau to screen cases to show just how integrated this is to our day-to-day work. Additionally, we also know that incarceration is not always the best option, and that public safety and getting people the care that they deserve is a priority for our office. I feel like we show this in many ways. One way is through our Community Navigators program. So that's folks who that's a peer-to-peer based navigation program with people with lived experience who work with folks struggling with mental illness, and so like SMS that folks have referred to, and also with like the drug use. These are people who may have a case there who just need support and hopefully don't get involved with the criminal justice system. I'd also like to add, just to sort of speak to like some of the legal process questions that you've brought up, that our intergov and pathways chief are in conversations with stakeholders around this bill, and definitely agree with the idea to expand treatment courts, and that we'd like to be able to bring someone from our Pathways division to speak more to this topic at the December meeting. That is what I have to add at this time, and thanks for hearing me out. If anyone has any specific questions.
I have none, but we would welcome you to the December meeting, and some more bill sponsors will come and we can have a conversation then, if you don't have one earlier than that. So that would be terrific.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that I just like to emphasize that our office is definitely in support of the expansion of treatment courts, and that these sort of alternative to incarceration programs are a real big point for our office and our team. But yeah, we'll work on that, and we'll be in touch with you, Stu. You know, we have your information.
Great.
Are there any more questions from the crowd?
I just want to emphasize on that behalf of the providers that I'm really happy to see the funding in there, because that is, like, I know people that I used to work with would constantly say, yeah, the treatment courts are great, but treatment courts are the judicial system. They don't actually provide any treatment, just to be clear. It's all of the providers are the ones that have to do all the treatment, so that needs to work and absolutely hand in hand together in order for this thing to work.
And it should be noted that in the legislation, the judges that will operate the treatment courts will get special training.
Yes, yeah, that's part of the legislation, is that there will be annual training, and also annual reporting. A lot of these courts are really kind of a black box. There's no requirement that anyone report it, and so we get very little information from them. So this would hopefully really give us a chance to see how it's working. I mean, you know, every county will be a little bit different, but I think that's great from a policy analysis perspective, because then we can kind of measure the counties against each other and see.
So this is a statewide initiative.
Yes.
There, like, I would think about next steps. Is there, I think you sent us the legislation that is in the Senate committee.
It's in Senate Finance and Assembly Ways and Means. So the next step.
So it's in the assembly, it's on both sides.
Yeah, it passed through its original committee, the subject matter committee, last year, and so yes, that's where it is now. We are trying to get this passed in the budget though, because it has a fiscal note.
So that's next June.
Starting in June, it's a budget cycle, June till, it's supposed to be April 1st, but, and.
Yeah, June.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't
so.
know. Hochul's running for
Yeah,
reelection, so.
That's
maybe I'll have to
true.
spare
Yeah.
her.
Should be busy.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe she'll run sooner.
Yeah.
Well, let me just, since Alec is here, housing is not in this bill, even though it's an important component, except that the providers will work as hard as they can to get people housing.
Yeah,
But isn't housing an exceptionally important, and dimension of mental health care, of mental health treatment?
yes, I mean, again, we're kind of balancing like, well, on one hand, yes, but we don't. Well, okay, I should just say, yes, housing is, but we wanna balance, making not overly prescriptive legislation, so this is going to impact every jurisdiction in the state. And every jurisdiction looks differently, so we have to bear that in mind, and so everything has to be like a little bit vague, like treatment and services, is usually what we say.
Something in Onondaga is gonna be different.
Yes, okay.
And Alec is, going to either speak or ask a question, which I guess is the same thing.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Stu. I do have a question, and as Stu predicted, it is related to housing. But I'm just really curious about one of the slides that you showed previously, where you showed that the cost of incarceration in the state is 114,000 annually, over 500,000 annually in the city. But then you said compared to supportive housing, it ranges from 25,000 to 50,000 annually. And I'm just a little curious about that cost estimate. Because as I'm sure a lot of us know, developing housing and building housing it can be really, really expensive. It's oftentimes cost prohibitive to do a lot of different kinds of special housing, such as senior affordable housing or permanently affordable housing. And when it comes to things like supportive housing, where a lot of these people have really specific and special needs that require a lot of attention, I'm just curious how you reached that cost estimate conclusion. Um, and I guess in that same vein, who builds these houses and provides this housing for these people in need?
So who builds them is, there's different, I mean, you probably know this better than I do, so I feel like I don't wanna mess this up, but there's different housing, supportive housing programs. There's like 1515, Eshai, and then one other one that I can't remember the name of. Do you know what it? And they're all kind of managed by different stakeholders. A lot of the supporting housing that's in the pipeline currently is being managed through OMH because it's going to be mental health specific supportive housing. Where did we get the number? This was, it might be a little bit dated, but back in like 2022, it was a part of Vera did an assessment of like what it takes to provide wraparound services for people with mental health needs. I think this was 2022. Yes, the spring of 2022, this was part of the budget conversation. And so Vera put together like a fact sheet, and there was a range because that did not take into account like the cost of capital construction, but it was the difference, or how much it costs to operate one unit of supportive housing, and the range depends on whether or not it's scatter site, which is the higher range, or it's like a supportive housing building, like a dedicated building, which is a lot more, it's a lot cheaper. Who actually manages the supportive housing services and like the tenancy and all of that? In New York City, there's a lot of different organizations that do, you know, it's like an RFP process. So Osborne, Fortune, you know, there's, yeah. I think Samaritan Village is now doing it, but anyway, yeah. So they're like treatment providers that already kind of are in this field. There's one in my neighborhood, actually. Breaking ground.
Same Horizon, do they do that too?
I don't know. I think they probably do, but it's probably for domestic violence survivors.
Okay, and I see, Francisco has put a number of questions in the Q and A. Francisco, would you like to just speak to us? And hang on while we allow you to speak. And you may not have a mic, of course, but. Otherwise, Brendan, can you just pop the Q and A up so we can see the question?
I think Michael has no question.
Also, I see Alec has another.
Go ahead, Alec.
Thank you. Thanks for that answer. That was really, really helpful. My other question is related to one of the statistics that you showed. I think it was on the first or second slide, where you identified that 1 in 5 New Yorkers has a mental health diagnosis. Now, maybe
Yeah.
you mentioned this before, maybe I missed it, I'm not really sure, but what is considered and what do you define as a mental health diagnosis? And additionally, what is defined as serious mental illness, right? Housing and homelessness and serious mental illness are all intrinsically related in many aspects. So I'm just curious to kind of understand what serious mental illness is defined as here.
Great question. So serious mental illness there's no standard definition for serious mental illness, which I've learned. It's a term that gets used a lot. But every, like SAMHSA has a definition for serious mental illness. SSD has a definition for serious mental illness. The definition that we use, it mirrors the definition that they developed, like maybe 5-10 years ago with the correctional health services that operate at Rikers Island. And it is the following. So there's two different buckets. There's certain diagnoses which are sort of presumptively considered serious mental illness, just like psychotic disorders like schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder. There's mood disorders like bipolar disorder. There's depressive disorders and PTSD, I believe, trauma disorders. And then, so that's a presumptive category. And then the second category is any other diagnosis in the DSM-5, which causes severe functional impairment in the person's daily life. And then
Interesting, okay.
what do we call a mental health diagnosis? That, I think that's just like the lower standard, like any diagnosis under the DSM-5. Honestly, I think that's an turnout, just like surveying my family, my friend group, myself, like, I feel like we all probably have some mental health diagnosis, most of us do.
Like anxiety, like.
Yeah, or like someone at some point is depression, but,
Yeah, but it's a matter of scale though, you're talking about.
Yeah,
actual
yeah.
serious.
And the impairment, I think, and how you're functioning.
Right.
And what
Yeah.
actions are related to your health diagnosis.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I think the threshold in that statistics is like, you have gone to a doctor, you have been screened for, you've been diagnosed for it, so that's how they.
And possibly medicated.
And possibly medicated, right? The point of that slide is more that just like. We all
Stress how
know
big
5
it's a
people,
real- it's a-
so everyone is impacted, like even if you don't yourself identify as having mental illness or mental health diagnosis, you know somebody who does and you care.
Family member.
It's not just someone other out there.
Exactly.
Who is, theoretical, it's people
Yeah.
that are in our community. Or us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not-
Okay, so we're
Well,
gonna be looking at this, bill next year. We're going to, I think everyone, most people in the universe seem to favor this, but it has some reservations. So we're going to hear what the DA says, I hope next month. And you will be welcome to join us. You can come in person, but there's not gonna be cookies.
But it's been such a lovely experience.
Well, if you come, maybe you could figure out some cookies.
Okay, but I told him that I actually have 2 toddler aged kids at home, so it's very hard to do something like this in
Oh,
my
I
house.
know. Oh, you mean
Like online, yeah, they're gonna be running them through and I might have to come.
Slides.
I got the slides earlier today and they will be posted on our meeting minutes tracker probably tomorrow.
Also, Stu, can we just have any follow-up questions for them? Like, we just run through you or?
Yeah, you can go through it.
Wait, send them, do some, because I'm sure it'll be
And
useful
they'll
for you to
get
have them.
Redistributed back there.
Okay.
Then we can deal with it next month. And that's it, I guess, for right now, right?
Yeah.
We're good?
I so admire your optimism. No, in a really good way. I think it's beautiful. And you've already been in this and seen so much, so I really,
Yeah.
it gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah,
In general, for humanity. That's what you did for me today.
That's why we have you here. Okay,
Thank you.
then we're gonna say thank you.
All right,
We have, you can stay with us, but.
No,
it's
it's
gonna-
okay, I'll let you get to your other matters.
We'll force you to go home to chaos.
Yeah, hopefully they're asleep now. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much.
And thank you for Rebecca for setting this up,
Oh, yeah, of course.
getting this on the books.
Thank you.
Have a good
Bye, guys, take care.
Thank you. So just quickly, first of all, I will tell you that, we spoiled DSNY for some data because that's apparently the way you get it. We requested, I selected 37 records semi-randomly from 2 different months this year. Of those 37.
47,
I'm
rather.
sorry, 47, we got 35, right?
Correct. So we'll see what the deal is with the other 12.
So the rest weren't denied, they just weren't provided. But they're interesting because, so one of the reasons, first of all, we want these records because. You've got this, this public service announcement. And the question is it really having an impact? Now, I think it's a great looking announcement, I love it. I love it. And it doesn't cost us anything, so it's fine that we do it. But ultimately, you wanna know that when you do these things, you're not just saying, you don't have an output, but nothing's coming of it. So.
Measurable impact.
Exactly.
Are we talking about the original message? With the lady, the older,
Yes.
the kind of old fashioned, not fifties, kind of, I don't know,
There's only been one of them.
that one?
Yeah.
Okay, I do have some feedback on that.
Or doing that.
So I look at all those sites. I do.
I do
get
too, I
information from all
pause
them.
and look at them.
I thought the message, it took me too long to understand the message. Like, I think we could just do something that's,
Simple.
cause you're walking, right?
Yeah.
And we're New Yorkers, we're walking fast. The other thing, and I just really wanted to bring up is, I've been walking a lot through our area and I've never seen so much trash. I mean, like, I'm upset by it, actually.
Yeah.
It looks terrible, it is filthy out
That
there. I
was,
don't know
that
why.
was one monthly ad, like that was just, like, we have another one.
Oh, we didn't.
Yeah, but that's just, we could, like.
Because I love it, I
Okay.
love for us to do this, I
Yeah.
actually wanted to talk about it, so
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, we should really be doing this.
No, yeah, we'll run by something next few
So,
weeks.
so let's talk about that. What we lack is data.
Yeah.
You see it, I see it. So we pulled this, these are 311. I'm gonna call it complaints. They could be called service requests if you want, that went to 311. The records that we have are from DSNY, which show their response, and the ones that we pulled are the ones where, I think this was my selection criteria, DSNY did not find a condition that was needed to be addressed.
Mhm.
But yet, when you look at the text of the people who submitted this, they say, this has been a chronic problem. Every time I write in, you say there's no condition. So something's going on. And I'm not withholding this from you. I just didn't want to flood you with crap until we can get more of it consolidated. But there is some problem here that we need to uncover. There's not enough, as far as I can tell, data anymore, that even assesses the trash on the street. The mayor had what I forgot what it's called, where somebody would go around surveying the streets, and I don't think that's happening right now.
But I wonder, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm not sorry. The like East Midtown Alliance or like some of like the Joe Fund, like those guys are going around picking up the
I'm not
trash.
seeing them anymore.
I see the East Midtown Alliance, though I.
Not the
do
Dow
not
Fund,
They're all
not
intentional.
seeing them.
I don't see.
I
it.
used to see them all the time.
Yes, but I wonder if they are not, like, I don't know that they are like cataloging it, but they may have a data point that we don't need to, put it in a FOIA request.
And also, again, like the bids, they're collecting trash, they're doing what,
Right.
they'll say they're doing what the city's supposed to do.
Yeah, so we had talked about this executive board meeting, which is, working with, I guess it was Keith's office before, but now it's Virginia Maloney's office in terms of,
Still key.
yeah, so
Couple of months.
for 2 months, in terms of taking the campaign and, you know, we can kind of think of a really good messaging, because I like that feedback, right? And potentially working with our city councilmen to find a way to amplify, whether it's messaging, whether it's working with DSNY, but that was the thought is, we have this messaging, how can we amplify it? But at the same time, making sure that the data, you know, shows that it is, or what the actual impact is.
So the point is only that right now we're inching our way toward collecting data.
Yeah.
Realistically, I mean, if the city denies us data, then we know we may need to act independently, but you know, the best way is to have real data and to get some cooperation. So we're working on that.
Although I think it's really, really hard to draw a line between, you know, 3-second ads on LinkedIn and more
LinkedIn.
trash on the street. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
And Link NYC kiosk, like, but to draw a line between, it's like, what do they say, like, you know, 50% of advertising works, but you never know which half, right? Like, and that's it.
Well, if the streets are getting dirtier where the ads are being displayed, probably not.
No, but it also doesn't mean, we don't know that they wouldn't be getting 60% dirtier.
That's true. I mean, there's a limit
Right.
to what you can infer, but
Right.
we, you know.
Like, oh, it's this time of year, there's more tourists and they don't care. Like,
Yeah,
what-
the
I'm not
ads are
just
just-
saying,
There's that, like, they'll be effective with, in my opinion, at least other,
yes.
other like implementation, so, I mean, the attempt, like, I like the ads, but even the greatest ad is still something that people see for 10 seconds, so.
Right. And I, you know, honestly, part of the reason I think about the bids and what they can do is they are often the ones emptying the trash cans. And I can't, I mean, how often do you walk by a trash can that is totally full? Like, all the time, right?
So
Like, it might
Brandon's
be-
glad that he'll have something else to do, and look, his hand is up. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was going to say, and something for you all to maybe keep an eye out on, given that this is a concern, is, yeah, see how often trash cans are full and even how often trash cans aren't there. Because, at least in my experiences, dealing with these sorts of issues from a service request standpoint, a good amount of the time when there are complaints about like dirty sidewalks, dirty streets, it's oftentimes because trash cans are either full and are not getting serviced enough, or trash cans are just outright missing. And if there's no place for people to put trash, then
Yeah,
streets are more likely to be dirty.
We can get 2 ads, because I think we need to pressure businesses to pick up in front of their,
Well,
because that's a huge problem.
so where I'm going with this though, is
Okay.
first, we should try to collect data, and we should know if the agency have data. I think we heard, yeah, with DSNY that said that they decide when they're gonna send in street sweepers, based on alternate side of the street. And our question was, well, shouldn't alternate side of the street that's determined by DOT be, you know, based on the cleanliness of the street to start with? So, you know, the question is DSNY responding to problem spots, or are they just following routine?
Or this is what I was saying, like, I think the city councilman's office, they also have a swap too, so maybe that's why I thought was to collaborate with them.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and like, it's a winning issue, who's gonna, like,
And I did love the.
I want dirtier
yeah,
streets.
I mean. Once the problem, the thing about it is, once you notice it, it's like you can go through it, like, you know, it's a little messy, but once you notice it, you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
I think guilty of people, it's a good idea.
So we also had this conversation about symbolic acts versus, so we had a conversation a year ago, I guess, about aspirational acts, and said basically, we're not gonna pass a resolution that doesn't have any impact. Symbolism's a little bit different, so I want to be clear that there's a distinction there. I mean, there are times that even though it's called symbolism, it may actually have an impact on it in some way. But you understand that, you know, there should be a reason, you know, first, we shouldn't be searching for,
Oh, problem, no, for sure.
so, okay, I was gonna raise sidewalk riding, but since, Michael Ann's not here,
I want writing.
riding.
All writing.
Like,
Shocking that my plan is not.
but I'll just say that, I mean, I had believed that this was better, better an issue for transportation.
Totally.
However, now that, NYPD is handing out criminal summonses for traffic violations, I think it begins to come closer to us. I don't particularly like this issue because I see two sides that aren't really interested in working with each other. They're both extreme. And they're trying to duck the issue rather than work together. But if it is, it's a continuing issue in the city, I mean, it seems to be escalating, so we may end up wanting to take that up again. And, we'll see. Does anyone have any old, new, or different business?
I have some old business that actually, or new business, but it relates to what you were
You don't have to categorize.
talking about, whatever. It relates to what you were talking about service requests. Which is that in the last 6 weeks or so. Thank you. Submitted for the, like literally the first times ever, submitted 2 noise requests. Or noise complaints. And both of them were responded to really quickly and completely meaningless thing. And this one, which I forwarded, and thank you very much for pulling that up. At around 1 o'clock in the morning, jackhammers, literal pile drivers, like dump trucks. I was just falling asleep and I literally did not sleep that night at all because it was going on. My computer was turned off, so eventually around, I think 5:30, I called 311 and I made a noise complaint, which even though I had a conversation with this woman, it came up as loud talking, which it so was not. And I eventually was like, okay, I'm not sleeping, I might as well go and see what's going on. And I go up and there was some emergency electrical work. I still don't know what it was, there were no ComEd trucks. And you can tell, I'm like reliving the trauma. And clearly it was something that needed to be done. But I got a response within a few hours of this. I don't know if you.
Maybe even a little bit less, because it was submitted at 5:37, response at 6:08.
Yeah, so first of all, it was not correctly defined. And I know that there is, like, if I had done this, I should have done it on the app, but whatever. I wasn't thinking straight because I had been up for 36 hours. But I'm sure what happened was that, the cops swung by and they saw, oh, this is like legit work going on. The street was closed. There was a lot of work going on. But what got me thinking about was this was such an insufficient response. Had I at 6:08, and I think I might have waited until I got the response to go out. It was such an insufficient response that all it did was improve their clearance rate for the 311 service requests. What it did not do was actually let a member of the public know what was going on and why you had lost a night of sleep. And there was, the other thing that I had put in was also a noise complaint that was for a big protest, but I live near the UN. I hear a lot of protests. This was during the day, but it literally, with the windows closed, registered 82 decibels in my apartment. And it went on for hours, and it was not clear to me that it was permitted. Or, and again, I went out and looked and saw it, and they were running wires from 42nd Street to 48th Street, and it was amplified along all of Second Avenue along that. And again, I got a response that was like, there's no reason for this complaint. And I feel like it's great, and these were, I'm sure, both quality of life. Like the quality of life team responded to these. And yet, in neither case was anything fixed, which it wasn't gonna be, because one of them was like legit protest, and one of them was work that had to be done. But I was left feeling like it was, like, what's the point? And so I felt, and yet I also felt like 311 can say, great, like both of these were clear, and the quality of life team could say, we resolved this problem, when they honestly didn't resolve anything. And so I guess part of the reason I wanted to bring this to the committee was, I wonder if any of you have had this kind of experience. And second, do you think this is a problem, or should you just like get over
Are you saying that it's your concern that it's real? Sorry.
it? No, I think.
I'm gonna summarize the,
Great, but I think what's happening is the system is sort of being gamed.
what do you mean by, like, on the, which side?
And that the police are saying, well, I went and looked and everything is fine. And I feel like I'm not ignoring you, but I feel like had NYPD provided, instead of saying responded to the complaint and there was no evidence of the violation, and had they said, there is, noise is due to necessary work at that time, due to emergency construction work or something.
So no one phones you though,
No.
because these teams, some of them anyway, pride themselves on making phone calls right afterwards, but it might be.
And she asked, do you want to be anonymous? And I was like, no, go for it. And
I was gonna say, yeah, I mean, some constituents reach out to our office because they have similar experiences. And that's where, like, part of our job as an office is to reach out to the appropriate city agencies and try and get some answers.
And that might be why we see the DSNY responses all saying, we didn't find anything. And I have actually had personal experience with that, so I
Same.
find that entirely credible.
Pervasive, and it happened to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
There was a bar that was operating across the street, a live band outside. which I was like,
outside.
yeah, outside on the
Outside?
sidewalk. I was like, wow, that shouldn't be allowed, and I did
And
it,
it's
I threw it
not
on the
allowed.
bus. Within 5 minutes, it was closed, and said
Oh.
NYPD observed and did not find any.
But they
It was
did
closed.
close.
In 5
They
minutes.
did.
No, the complaint was
Oh,
closed.
The
right?
complaint
entire
was
thing,
closed,
yeah, it was-
the band was still there.
Yeah,
So I was like,
Oh,
okay,
this is
clearly
the-
nobody even came.
The idea
Mhm.
They just closed the ticket.
is great, it's not functioning the way it should. And even the app, There was a homeless, really suffering person in the subway when I was coming out, the other day, and I wanted to report to get him help. I couldn't even get through the freaking, like, sorry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's so hard to even navigate, to get your request. Because they get all these lines of, does it fit into this category? Does it fit into that category?
Okay, so how would you like us to address this?
Well, I mean, I know you.
Can I make a suggestion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
Or do you wanna-
ahead. No, go for it.
I was gonna say, maybe the question I have on hearing this is how common is this? Like, is this a kind of a ubiquitous thing where, so, you know, you make the complaint and I make a complaint and we individually have an experience, but is this kind of a community sentiment, you know, us basically?
So,
Yeah.
what,
Well,
what
that's why I
Brendan
wanted
is
to
about
ask
to
you.
tell us, I think,
Yeah.
although it's hard to predict, Brendan, is that we're also questioning, I think, to get the survey, the
Exactly,
satisfaction survey related to these records, and, you know, we don't know, the everyone likes to anonymize stuff. So that's one of our quests.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You still, I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't
so-
Finish it, I guess. Go ahead.
yeah, you're on the right track. So, a few months ago, I learned that there is a 311 satisfaction dashboard.
Yeah.
And the average satisfaction score for 311 requests filed throughout the city is pretty low in general. In our district, it is a whopping 30 out of 100.
It's your experience, I guess.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah, if you're a batter.
If you're a batter, that's
That's-
Hall of Fame caliber, but if you're taking an exam in school, you'd be flunking.
We'll distribute that URL to us, and you'll see when you see it that you can, filter the results set and sort
Like
it.
complaints and,
If
yeah,
not, you can't see the individual
that's fine.
complaints, but you can see them in the aggregate. And if you mouse over, if you hover over any of the lines, it will display additional information.
So, kind of a comment?
At the very start of this, I said you don't have to ask them to be recognized.
What I was gonna say is that I, through my IT work, I know, like, I know that 311 uses a certain type of software it's, you know, kind of CRM, typical case management. What I was curious about is this, I'll call it like an inefficiency, is that happening because of the tool? Is that happening because there might be something that could improve upon it? So that's why I wanted to understand the community sentiment about if, like, what is not working, why is it not working? And I'm not sure really how we find that out, but
I think we start by looking at, by correlating the satisfaction surveys with the complaints.
Yeah.
Seeing as much substance as we can, and Brendan still has his hand up, so go.
Well, I have my hand up again. And also looking at individual complaint types to see which ones have particularly low satisfaction rates, like, one of the category types with the lowest satisfaction is things related, ironically, to noise. The satisfaction score for noise issues in our district is 16 out of 100.
Wow.
And
I'd give it a 0.
and for
the
home,
question is why is that? Like, you know, we have that, if we have that data, why? Because they're responding to it, right? Like, if yours, they responded and but like, they didn't do anything.
But I wonder, though, again, the satisfaction is, it's very subjective. And so I wonder, had I received a response that said, you know, this is due to emergency construction, emergency electrical work, and is expected to last, you know, like another 24 hours. I wouldn't have been happy, but I would have been more satisfied. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I would have felt like that was a good 311 response. And so it wouldn't have made me happy about the outcome, but, and so I feel like there's kind of two different
issues.
two different issues there, yeah. And I know that, you know, there were probably only a limited number of responses that the police have the opportunity, or that whoever is completing the 311 service request completion form have to put in there, but I feel like when you tell somebody like why something is happening, they'll accept it so much better than if just like, yeah, we checked it out, everything's fine. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
really? Like, I haven't seen relevant, please.
I think that's fair, and we probably, the way we should probably look at it is not by 311, but department by department. And we can do that with NYPD, and we can do that with DSNY. And if you guys have suggestions, we can take that offline. We don't have to sit here and discuss that right around the table right now. But I think that's a great issue that we should be looking at.
Yeah, you and I can parse through and talk.
Yeah.
Start looking at.
And perhaps even issue by issue, because there are clearly some issues that have particularly low satisfaction responses, or particularly low satisfaction rates.
Like with the response, like.
Yes.
the-
Like with noise, for example.
And with that, we would like to.
I have another issue to bring up.
Go for it.
Okay, so we discussed this over email, but I was gonna read out what I wanted to say. So as we know, domestic violence is a very serious public safety issue. Last year, the governor released a statewide report about domestic violence, and the NYPD created a domestic violence task force, which was renewed in 2025. In coordination with the mayor's office to end domestic gender-based violence, which is called NGBV, and the New York State's Office for the Prevention of Domestic Violence, it focuses on better coordination between law enforcement and social services, strengthening enforcement against repeat offenders, early intervention and education programs, and improved data sharing across agencies. I came during the summer night out event. I met a few NYPD officers who are part of this new task force. And one of the things they were telling me is that because of there's this concept called, it's like digital gender-based violence, which is that because of the proliferation of, you know, Instagram and tech and everything, it's unfortunately becoming more and more of an issue that is affecting everybody, to the extent that the NYPD has renewed this task force. So when I heard this, basically, as I said, the domestic task force renewed the sharper focus on repeat offenders. It's already been incorporated into operational guidance, coordination meetings, and as I said, the city's priority is straightforward: reduce repeat domestic violence offenses, improve tracking and case continuity, and ensure survivors have access to stable support, including housing, legal assistance, and culturally appropriate services. Some key points, as I said, the task force priorities have, you know, there's been the reintroduction of the task force, and Manhattan's CompStat and NGBV reporting continue to show domestic violence as a significant contributor to felony assault and repeat incident patterns. Survivor housing access and rapid referral capacity are also being expanded as part of the city's implementation. These are things that are currently happening, they're not proposals. So relevance to us, and speaking about how we don't want anything symbolic, not saying there is a gap in a district, but I also don't want to assume there isn't a gap in the district. After learning about this, I felt the responsible move is to understand whether the enforcement and service coordination updates are already affecting the 13 precincts response workflow, and whether there's any unmet need locally, particularly around repeat offenders, referral pathways for survival service access, and if there's anything that we can do to assist. As I said, the district's role, or anything would not be symbolic. The district's role is clarifying whether precinct practices align with the renewed city and state coordination standards, identifying if survival services or service access points in CV6 are functioning as intended, ensuring district actors are not operating in isolation. If everything is already functioning well, it would not be an issue, but if something is not aligned, I think it would be, I think it's incumbent on us to know now and not later. And that's what I was proposing was, discuss or invite one briefing from the NYPD Domestic Violence Unit or NGBV's Borough-Based Coordination Team, to get a sense of, if we're doing everything we can to help out with this.
And I think that's really interesting because I had heard that of all serious crimes, like, don't quote me on that, but domestic violence is the only one that is still increasing in New York. That, you know, like murders are down, like all major felonies. Except, and I think, I don't know how rape fits into that, because they can also be like, domestic violence charge. But that domestic violence, like everything else is going down, and it's going up, and so.
Yeah, I think the intent is to get, basically the intent is, as we discussed, we don't want anything that's symbolic. Do we, does our community have the resources it needs, and is there anything that you can do to suggest or improve?
And I would think 17% would want to involve them in that, I'm just action.
And just so you know, the Comstat, the way New York City, indexes sex crimes and gender-related crimes, and the way the federal government does are different, so the index crimes may be going down for one and up for the other. It's hard to tackle them. So, you know, we were talking, and we've been talking about if police are the right people to respond to mental health crises.
Yeah.
This raises the same question. Do you have any insights into that?
I don't know if they would be the right people. I do think they might have the information about what's happening. So I see this as two different concepts.
Do you see, but there are other entities that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Directly with, and I think that.
You made the suggestion about inviting some, domestic survivor groups. It's one of those, I was at the night out, and I was surprised. I didn't even know we had a domestic violence task force. And they were talking to me and they said, yeah, this is it's more prevalent than I think the average person appreciates. And it's a little bit more insidious in the sense that it doesn't always have to be an extreme crime. It could be digital harassment. And so, yeah, I think that NYPD, the inclusion of them is either for data, if we, or just to understand what's happening. But domestic violence task, groups, they probably have the most insight because there's people that might not go to them. They don't want to report a crime. They just, domestic violence survivors. So I completely agree with that.
And it's also possible, of course, that the incidence has always been high.
Yeah, that's true too.
But people are reporting more.
They either reported more or that police used to ignore it.
Yeah.
So offline, we can discuss how we would approach this.
But we also know that during COVID, when people were stuck in homes together,
Right.
that number went.
So, but so that was when I had heard that there's like, when people were stuck at home, it skyrocketed, but it hasn't gone down, like
No,
other
it's-
times.
Because there's so much
Has-
mental
yeah.
health struggles.
Right.
And also, Stu, I appreciate what you said with that article. I think was that Louisiana or somewhere, basically because of the abortion restrictions. There's a power dynamic that happens now, and it's an increase in domestic violence. Now, I'm not with New York, that I don't think that's an issue, but I think goes to show that any change in social dynamics, I'll just say with, the amount of like cyberbullying that you see happening, translate that to a 23-year-old on TikTok or it's just, I think to me, it felt like a worthwhile concern to discuss or to see what's happening.
Yeah.
If there's something we can do.
And I thank you for that.
I mean, it's our community, so it's
I love
our
it.
community.
Yeah.
All right, so any other discussion about this?
Yeah.
Technical, we can take offline. Who wants to move to adjourn?
Jared. Second.
Rupal's like,
Third.
I gotta go. Oh.
Have to.
Yeah.
Meeting goes to business. The meeting is adjourned at 8:49.
49.
20:49.